Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive leadership in college athletics. We are here at the 2025 SBJ Intercollegiate Athletics Forum. I'm sitting here with Sean Frazier for another one of our conversations, which we try to have every time there's a conference or a forum or any kind of convention or anything like that. Greetings, Coach Frazier. Now, I never get the title right. I know it's like Vice President of Intercollegiate Athletics. Is that close?
Vice President, Director of Athletics and Recreation.
Okay, and Recreation.
There you go.
At Northern Illinois. Greetings, Frazier. Thanks for joining us.
Not a problem, Ty. Anytime.
Frazier, there's always something on your mind, right? There's always a whole lot of things happening. I heard Ross from Ohio State say today, since 2020, he went down a list of about 14 different things that have happened in the country or specifically in the industry that affects the things you do, the quality things you do. And he said the three things that don't change is being in a classroom, developing young people, and then playing sports, right? So I do wonder about your thoughts on not necessarily the state of college athletics, but you're always trying to be strategic in making sure the institution you represent, Northern Illinois, is in a position to be successful athletically so that you are not upsetting the well over on the institution side. We're trying our best to exist on our own. That's kind of impossible. We're trying to do it so we're not messing up things over on campus. Talk to me a little about your thought process around all the things involved in athletics and how you have to think.
Yeah, no, it's a good setup question. And what I can say is that very similar to what I said on our panel, trying to be the best version of ourselves, right? Understanding that we do not have a money tree in the backyard. People kind of laughed at that, but the expectations of our donors, our supporters, the folks that want Husky Nation and NIU to succeed have those expectations because we've created those expectations, not just during my time, but before I got to NIU. So it's this process of continual self-improvement, but understanding that I'm at a public institution in the great state of Illinois that is dealing with enrollment and other types of challenges.
Yep.
And just the whole issue, the enterprise of higher ed is demanding financially. So we can't be a burden to the university. We have to be part of the ambassadors of the Quan, right? We've got to be able to say, we're going to do this, but this is how we're going to do it from a financially and fiscally responsible perspective. So, and also do that without compromising standards. So standards, academic, athletic, I can't go on and on. So I think for us is continuously finding the way and reasons why we decoupled football, and now football is going to be going into the Mountain West. Our Olympic sports going to go into the Horizon League. Our wrestling team is going to go to the Pac-12. So we've created a model where we've decreased expenses because we're more regional in our Olympic sport portfolio, and then we turn around and do what we do in football. We already travel nationally. We're heavily funded in that area. There's a lot of expense that goes along with that, and we needed a media rights financial scenario where it was feeding that dragon. So so this was a model that is not different from others. The two that we took from was Army and Navy. Army and Navy play in the American Conference, and then they play in the Patriot League for their Olympic sports. So we took a model, we saw a model, and I had a guy tell me, it's a great gig if you can get that, Sean. And we went out there and we said, you know what, let's see if that works for us.
Yeah, I find that interesting because you think about separating from a conference like Mid-American Conference, right? NIU, they've been in there about 25 or 30 years or something?
We've been there for at least that long, and we actually walked away from the MAC
right,
and had to come back. But we also didn't have the house settlement, the
all
transfer
the things.
portal, your rev share, NIL. I could just pick one of those things, and we could say, yeah, that's probably a justification for taking a look somewhere else.
So you look at for the lack of a better word, breaking up the one conference model, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so football in the Mountain West.
Football's in Mountain West.
Football's in Mountain West, and then the Olympic sports are in
Horizon League.
And so you talk about saving costs regionally. Tell me about that in terms of, like, the Pac-12 is going to be
just wrestling.
Just wrestling.
Yes.
And then the Olympic sports Horizon League, is that a Midwest?
All Midwest, from Green Bay to
Right on
Indy.
down.
Yeah, we got Robin Morrison Pitt a little bit. That's probably our father's deal there, but we're not going to Buffalo. We're not going to Amherst, UMass. You know, I'm not sending my tennis team, my soccer teams across the. So, from a financial cost reduction expense, we're minimally going to be saving right off the shoot $500,000 a year. And as we take a look at the scholarship allocations and others, it's going to be more. So, and then we've got fans and people that can actually now travel to our games, and we have access to NCAA championships. It's a great solution, again, with the changing climate and changing atmosphere of college athletics. We've got more regional on the meaty side of our sports portfolio, and we put our football on the plane, and we were doing that anyway.
Yeah, right. So does the expense of flying further with football-ish, is it similar to what you were flying in the MAC and then playing outside of the MAC type situation?
Yeah, it's
football specifically.
It's obviously farther. You know, we didn't have Hawaii in our conference. We got Hawaii in our, but we're not traveling to Hawaii every year, right? So the reality is that we've increased the media dollars that are coming to us.
In terms of where you're going.
Yes, substantially.
Yeah.
And then we've got commitments to our operational budget, but now we're opening our whole portfolio up where we're bringing in the Mountain West schools into our portfolio. We're also bringing in the Horizon schools into our portfolio. So we're able to capitalize now on that financially, to ticket sales, multimedia rights. You know, it's like that new car, right? You got to maximize everything you can. So we are being compensated, so to speak, to do the operational pieces, but now we're also opening up ways to reduce expenses on the regional side, and then we're also going to enhance that with the new media outlets that we're going to be now in.
One person said to me a couple of years ago, like, really the only way to bring in more money is to, for the lack of a better word, increase subscribers, right? Almost like Netflix, right? You always want to get new subscribers. So now we're in Hawaii. Like, y'all need to know what these Huskies are talking about over here. Right?
Correct.
You know what I mean?
And they're going to benefit too, right? So part of the attraction of Mount West, now they've got, you know, we're not in the city of Chicago. We're in the suburbs. We're in Chicagoland, but we have 200,000 living alums in Chicagoland. We're an hour and 45 minutes from downtown Michigan Avenue. So we're also the third largest media outlet in the country.
So they benefit from coming to you guys too, exactly.
They're
so the whole
coming to us,
yeah.
And we're going to put them on Showtime, right? So that is a good relationship. In, you know, as we kind of take a look at the Mount West product, we're excited about that.
Tell me about the thinking behind, like, you looked at what Army and Navy do, and then how do you choose conferences? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this. I'm thinking about academia, right? Does the research of the institutions tie into those kind of decisions? Like, does that open up collaboration with schools when you're going to a conference that's outside of, I mean, I don't know if that ties in.
It does. When I was at Wisconsin, you know, there's a big research connectivity, right, with the Big Ten. And you know, those are R1 institutions, land grant institutions, heavily researched, impactful, land, you know, all of those pieces. So now we've married up with these land grant R1s, state institutions. So it's good. It's a good relationship, and it enhances our profile, and we're on point, you know. So I think that if anything, this adds to the relationship and our profile overall, academically and athletically. Now it's up to us to capitalize on that. If we just treat it like a athletic conference, it'll just be an athletic conference.
Yeah.
But if we treat it with a research eye, or we treat it like an enrollment eye,
potential academic partners and all those kinds of,
then we drill down, because now we are part of those relationships, and they become more than just, I play football with this school.
We just show up and compete.
And my president and our board have assessed that. They see the opportunity, and part of our decision making to do this was based on, you know, hey, now we had different eyeballs.
Yep. Yeah, I find that extra interesting. I think about private equity. I don't. My mind is not completely wrapped around it, but I did hear some things today, actually, that, if private equity comes into a school, you kind of move out the third party servicers, right? The Learfields, the Pacquiao, and the ticket sales, the StubHub, the whoever.
That's a potential. Yeah.
Right. I hadn't thought about that, right? And I'm sure those third party services are like, hey, what's happening out here? So, right. Uh I still am trying to figure out, if private equity comes in, is it just making the things we do better by increasing the manpower and the potential expertise? Or are there things that aren't being done that they want to? I mean, I'm not sure about the return. I don't understand what the return is, other than, I guess, increasing manpower and expertise will actually help you to be better. But it still seems like that's not enough for me to give you a return on $100 million. I mean, I don't know. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, some of these numbers are huge, right? I think in our case, as we take a look at all investment, because that's what this is. This is investment. This is a partnership. People are looking at us as a possible commodity, an ability to drive revenue. That's the bottom line. So when you look at that from a business enterprise, you look at it from, okay, here's the verticals on X, Y, and Z at this place that can drive revenue. That's that return, that ROI, that return on the investment. I think that when you take a look at the private equity models that have been out there, and why it's a little bit muddy, is that you're dealing with state institutions, private institutions. There's more regulatory connectivity on these things than just, okay, here are your football team, your basketball team, your porn rights, your naming rights. There's more to that, because now you're talking about state property. You're talking about institutional responsibility. There's more than that, right? So it's not just you can just sell this. Hey, it's not an ad on a billboard or whatever the hell it is. It's more there. So I think that you take a look at private equity and private capital, which I'm more of a favor on the capital side, because I'm looking for a partnership. I'm not looking for a glorified loan. Not to say that private equity is a glorified loan, but people are looking for something on, we give you something, they can want something in return. I'm looking for a partner to come in and say, okay, from a sponsorship standpoint, we like your brand. We like what you represent. Here's some of the things that we can do if we invest in you that you can do better. Maybe you currently are doing. Maybe it's just a ticket operation. Maybe it's something else. But at the same time, my bandwidth only says I can do it this level because of where I am financially. If they turn around and add XYZ dollars, and in the case you just said, 100 million, maybe they can see that, hey, I can take your X 100 and I can make 200, I can make 300. And by the way, I want a piece of that because I've invested in that enterprise. So that's kind of what you see when you see these big deals.
Yeah.
I think for someone like us, we do have something that we didn't have before. We're going to the Mountain West. We're going into the horizon. We've got now new shiny toys that you might want to partake in, you might want to be involved with, and you might see a way that you can enhance that experience further. And by the way, if we give you X to enhance it, is there a percentage, there's a partnership that we can have. So a bit of a sponsorship component of that. So I think all of that has to be spelled out, because all the regulatory, all the things that go on with state statutes and what have you, in the great state of Illinois, need to be observed. But I think it's a great conversation to have that we didn't have before. So I think that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I find that interesting. So, well, A, I want you to tell me the difference between capital and equity. But then two, we think about like venture capitalists, right? Or even just creating an entrepreneurship, right?
That's basically what it is. You hit it right there. I saw the bells ringing in your head, because that's what it is. A venture capitalist has a bit of money, have a bunch of investors that are taking their money and making more money on that money. So ultimately, they're targeting opportunities.
Yeah, targeting opportunities
to, again, enhance the amount of money that they have. And they have a bunch of investors who are willing to do that by virtue of the opportunities that they see to increase their return on the investment.
And then the equity is different how?
Equities can be very similar. I think we're all dealing with private equity. This is out of my scope.
Oh, yeah, right.
But what I've learned in this process, especially in the last 5 years, is that, some people don't have the upfront capital and they want to draw off that equity. Do you see what I'm saying? It's almost like, with your home. You have a certain amount of equity within your house, and you want to borrow off of that equity now. At some point, you're going to have to pay it back, or you're going to have some way to satisfy that particular note. But you do have a certain amount of equity already built up, and you're basically taking that upfront dollar to be able to deal with that, because maybe you don't have it right now to be able to invest for the future or to enhance the current operation. So I don't know if I messed that up, but that's my thoughts. I look at that as more of a glorified loan off of my particular situation. I'm not looking to do that. I got enough bill collectors on my behind. I think I said that on the panel. But I am looking for a partner that sees the opportunity to make more on their investment. So I'm looking more on the capital side of it to be able to, tease out some of the things that we know we have at NIU that if they, build it up and they support it, they should partner in some of that as well. How much, that's to be determined. And I think that's the kind of partnership that we have with some of our multimedia rights group that's out there selling sponsorships and doing those types of things. So I think that we've put ourselves in a better situation to tell that story because of the newness of the Mountain West and the horizon and just where our momentum is going right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because you think about entrepreneurship. What is the problem you're solving, right? Instead of just having a great idea, a venture capitalist invests in a company that has a good solution for a problem to be solved. They help grow that, incubate, grow it to a certain point to now it's operating on its own, and there are a whole bunch of people using that solution for what it needs to be used for. And then venture capitalists either stays in or they find an exit, they get out and sell the company to something else.
Well, no, it's to your point. They see this as an opportunity to grow revenue. We now have all of these new expenses. Rev share is one example, right? With the student athletes, dealing with the NIL component. We have new things now that are demands on college athletics that have to be satisfied, and they can't be just satisfied by the institution itself, just kicking more money into the operation of athletics. So we've got to be much more entrepreneurial on how we take a look at without compromising the standards of graduation and other things that are been sacred to academia. So we've got to think about that, but it's got to be a lot more strategic in that approach. And this is one method, right? There's probably other methods, but I think what institutions need to do is take a look at that and say, we would never do that. Like when we're talking about, branding on jerseys, branding that are on our field. No longer we can just say we don't do that any longer.
Yeah,
that's the enterprise that
where we've come.
Where we come. Especially now, we're talking about pay for play. We're talking about rev share. We're talking about all of those things. We've got to be thinking outside the box to a point. I'm not a big person on putting slapping a brand on everything. But it's here.
It's here. So what is, I think when my brain was formulating here, I saw something in the ticker this morning, and the blurb talked about somebody saying, like, all these things we talk about are just the symptoms, but we're not getting to the real problem. What it actually is the problem? I mean, there are a bunch of schools that can't bring in enough revenue, and is the problem that they're not bringing enough revenue, or that they are overextended in terms of what they offer in college? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I would argue this. I think the real issue is that we're all not, really working together. I think we're our own worst enemy relative to the governance. We change rules at a flip. We don't have accountability on some of the things that are going on relative to managing these new rules that we have every 5 minutes, from the SCORE Act to CSC to all these different things that are so-called new. We haven't put enough guardrails up to be able to operationalize it. So therefore, we change every 5 minutes, and we get people on the national media or whatever that will pontificate about, why did we do this? Why did we do this? And we backtrack. So we are definitely our own worst enemy when it comes to that. And we legislate the hell out of it, and then we complain about when it doesn't work. So it's constant like that. And people use, terms like it's the Wild Wild West. Well, we created the Wild Wild West. So I think it's important for us to kind of, take a deep breath and fix it. And how you fix it is you put things in place, and then we deal with the consequences from there. I think now, we let the genie out of the box, so to speak, and now we're trying to figure it out. Well, this whole issue about pay-for-play was always going to happen. We should have done a better job with operationalizing, like, what it's going to look like. Now we have people, every time Dick and Harry, saying, this is how you fix it. And some of these folks, quite frankly, are just not experienced or have the expertise to do it. They see it through their eyes, so henceforth it works for them, not necessarily for the enterprise of college athletics.
Is there a way to get everybody? I don't know if we can get everybody on the same page. And so then if you can't get everybody on the same page, then people have to make decisions like going into different conferences. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I am in a situation that forces me to have to think for myself and my specific entity, then I'm going to make decisions that work for my facility.
Well,
and we've seen that a lot with big, huge schools, right? But it doesn't necessarily help everybody.
Yeah, and it was not a choice by virtue of, for me and for our institution, which we went through a very robust review if this was the right fit for us in our, decoupling football situation. I would have much rather work with my colleagues in the G5 to talk about fixed football.
What can we do? Let's
instead of fixing everybody else. Well, the issue has been football, right? But I work for NIU, and my job is to make sure I take care of NIU in position.
But in the best possible.
So the frustration there is that I'm a part of the problem by virtue of taking just care of NIU. But again, looking at my paycheck, looking at the people that need leadership from me, this was the best we could do at this point in time.
Right, to make this happen. Excellent conversation. I'll ask you one more question. The conference thing, change and decoupling football, is this something where when you sit down with the president, you're like, hey, I have an idea, and I'm going to come back to you in a year, and it's going to sound a little crazy, but I'm going to have some research behind it. Like, tell me how you come that conversation, how you come to that. You know what I mean,
and I love my president. We've been together a long time. President Freeman is definitely a visionary. First female president at NIU. She understands, some of the crisis and some of the issues and drama around higher education. And it was just like that. This is back in 21. I was at a NACDA convention, and I remember, what happened was what? Pac-12.
Start moving around.
We had two defection schools of USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. And it started that conversation. That's when it started. I don't think I worked up enough nerve to go in to talk about what was happening until I knew what was going on, but we just did that. We had a one-on-one meeting, and I had a meeting with her, and I said, listen, what if? And it was just, this is what I hear, this is what I see. Here's the people who have contacted me about a possible situation. The situation around decoupling football was one, but because of the deterioration of the then Pac-12, it created other opportunities for us because of who we were, right? So it just like that, being transparent. I highly recommend that you have these conversations with your leadership as soon as possible, so it's not a shocking endeavor, because it takes so long to vet these things properly. If you just say, oh, by the way, hey, we're going to move to, that's not how that works. So I think that with her, it was really like, oh, this is what I've been told. This is what I think. We will continue to have this conversation with some data and some other things, but this is coming down the path like, and then it's a sobering moment because, hey, what are you saying? I'm like, if we don't do this, I bet you that there's other MAC institutions or other institutions like us that will take this opportunity. And I can verify those. So what we're trying to do is, again, be innovative, but also see how does this affect NIU in the ecosystem of athletics and higher education. So, yeah, it was an interesting conversation. We still talk about that day, and it wasn't just, okay, boom, and then.
Yeah, it was a ever-evolving, like, this is what it is.
And my leadership, data-driven, very comprehensive approach, measured, doing the right thing, doing our due diligence, as we should.
To make it happen. Well, Frazier, it's always good to talk to you. I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Anytime, brother. Keep it going. Keep it going.
Yes, sir. That was Sean Frazier, Vice President, Director of Athletics and Recreation at NIU. And of course, I am Ty Brown with one question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.